High-ranking Toronto cop who cheated in the name of equity received too light a penalty. She insists she acted with the best of motives to level the playing field, which she saw as tilted against the 6 officers because of systemic racial bias. She's not even remorseful of her actions. So do the 6 officers she helped get demoted? If we expect honesty from such positions of power, they should have reported the incident when it happened. Getting temporarily demoted to another high-ranking position with the option to return is hardly what I would call punishment, especially for race-based fraud allowing people to cheat their way into positions of trust. Completely agree. She should have been fired. She put identity politics over the qualifications of the officers and put people at risk. Talk about double standards. She should have been charged with some form of fraud. Race card successful. She's racist, it's as simple as that. And should be treated the same way any racist cop is. The real issue at the heart of Canada's meat processing industry isn't labor shortages. It's low wages. Pretty much the case for all sectors that cry labor shortage. I would like a boat, but I don't want to pay for one. I proclaim boat shortage and demand government help me by importing cheaper boats. I'll say it again, there is no such thing as a labor shortage. There only is pay shortages. This could be said about literally any business crying about a labor shortage. There has never been a labor shortage at any time in human history. The only shortage we are experiencing is a shortage of employers willing to make their job competitive. Our main problem is we have an excess of employers begging the government to be their nanny, an excess of employers who think they are entitled to free, cheap labor, and an excess of jobs in certain industries like food service and retail. Seriously though, we don't need a low-wage Tim Hortons or Subway on literally every block. And the basic bitch group doesn't need another restaurant pub on Trendy Avenue. Some of the people working there could go work at the meat packers instead. Replace Canada's meat processing industry with Canadian jobs in general. Meat's gone up 50% in price in the last few years. The farmers aren't getting that money, nor are the workers in the supply chain. Perhaps we could afford to send that money down the food chain. As it were, it might make an outrageously priced stewing roast a bit more palatable to know I'm helping the worker, not the Westons or Waltons. I work in industrial automation. Projects in many meat plants consist of replacing cheap shit with more cheap shit. Unless executives want metrics, the bare minimum needed to do the work on the floor. Half or more of the operators are foreign workers because the pay is below par. Why invest in capital projects to improve productivity or pay your employees when you can just order a few more indentured servants? You can make $25 an hour minimum with a pension plan putting cardboard boxes in packaging machines in a dairy plant where it's clean. Or you can make near minimum wage with no benefits manually triaging innards. Imagine which job people who have the small luxury of choice are going to choose. Is it getting too expensive to raise a child in Canada? It's not getting, it is. It's getting too expensive to raise a fucking hamster in Canada. It's too expensive to be a single person in Canada. My mother was on income support until I was 10. Even so, there was food on the table. Most of what we wanted we got. We weren't spoiled. I always wondered how she was able to do it with 3 kids. Sadly, even though I spend a quarter to a half of my income on food, and most of my income on housing, I can't even get close to what my mother did while on income support. I am working and probably make 6 to 8 times what my mother pulled in. Sadly, whoever is in power complaining about the low birth rate and why people aren't opting to have more children. It was a lot cheaper to raise children 5 years ago, and had I been more informed about the future at the time I had kids, I might have foregone having a family altogether. Not because of the cost, but because I am concerned about what my children will have to face when grown up and leaving the house. That is if they ever do. These thoughts are why you have an increased amount of couples going the child-free route. I have aired my sentiments to anyone in my circle considering having children, and it's none of my business, but as someone who has 2 children in this economy, don't do it. Don't. I hate hearing about how experts are worried about our birth rate. If life was more affordable, surely people would be having more kids. Getting LMAO. Whooping cough cases are soaring to new heights in Canada. What's behind the sudden spike? My parents delayed my shots because they were paranoid I'd come out autistic. Still autistic anyway. LMAO. It doesn't help that the simplest way to get kids vaccinated on schedule is through your family doctor. But the rate of Canadians who don't have a family doctor just keeps growing and growing. We lost ours a few months back because she decided to close her practice, and we have no idea how long it will be before we can be rostered with another practice. It's not like people are going to line up for 8 hours at an urgent care to get it done. Whooping cough will kill infants and the infirm. Get you and your kids vaccinated. Globally, the vaccination rate for 3 doses of the diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccine fell from around 86% in 2019 to 83% in 2020, meaning 22.7 million children around the world missed out. Whatever could have caused this anti-vaccination sentiment? Greater than pertussis continues to be a serious public health problem in India. There is poor documentation of large-scale outbreaks of pertussis in the country, unlike the recent large-scale outbreaks reported in many developed countries. Either many large-scale outbreaks are totally ignored and go unreported, or the existing pertussis vaccines are providing adequate protection. https immunizeindia.org/content/pertussis-whooping-cough/. 30-some years ago I accused my anti-vax friend of relying on herd immunity to protect her kids. She laughed and said, "Exactly." Unfortunately, now we are at a point where so many people think like this that herd immunity can't be relied upon for protection, and trust in vaccines is lower than ever. I have a family member who haven't gotten their 6-month-old her first vaccinations because she's healthy. They're educated, middle-class people with access to all kinds of information at their fingertips, but somehow they don't have a clue. How do you even fight that kind of willful ignorance? Canadian government spending now 80% of GDP growth, better dwelling. Totally normal and sustainable. Great work, guys. Where did they actually spend the money on? At least show us some same results. All I see is high taxes, crumbling infrastructure and healthcare, and then higher and higher spending. Sorry, how are we spending approximately $25 billion on national defense and approximately $50 billion on indigenous expenditures? That seems insane to me. QE is just borrowing from the future to pay for the present. Holy shit, we suck. Trudeau, did someone say 1 million more Indian immigrants?